Okay, one thing I've been kind of neglecting to do is to give y'all perspective on what Roger Knights has done as far as his analysis of Bob Heironimus and his changing stories. So I think it's time to give Roger his due for sure, because he single-handedly essentially destroyed all of Bob Heironimus's arguments. He started it out with this in 2005. A Tale of Two Suits, 26 Reasons Heironimus Wasn't Queen Kong. There were non-controversial portions with new information on 4 topics. Patterson himself, chapters 5 through 8 and 12. Al Diatley, chapter 16. Timeline of the film's development, chapter 17. Ownership, history of the film, and related legal issues, chapter 19. I found from my interviews with some of the book's interviewees that Long's character sketches seemed accurate. The book, in its non-argumentative proportions, was a good read, though it would have benefited from a copy editor's attention in spots, especially the index. Long's asides about the scenery and soft drinks are okay according to the tenets of new journalism, and his implausible theory that Roger Patterson used William Rowe's sighting as a film script at least demonstrated imagination. Long also deserves some credit for non-sneakiness such as this, willingness to print much positive testimony on Roger Patterson's character, willingness to print Buff's critiques of his attitudes, such as Concentrate on the Film, attempt to retrace and validate Bob Heironimus' route in California, chapter 23. Revelation of his snap judgments and bias. This subjectivity could be called laying his cards on the table. Revelation, sometimes unconscious, of flaws in Heironimus' case, e.g. about showing off a suit from his car trunk, etc. Some authors would have hidden this, being upfront about his acceptance of the Hanson and Wallace confessions, page 264 and 442, though that only brought criticism on his head. There were 4 elements included I've always wished were generally employed. Chapter subheadings used for Patterson's 3 brothers in chapter 5. A technique I wish all authors would employ, and that style guides would encourage. A map of the Yakima area, but there also should have been maps of the film site and of the towns in the vicinity of Willow Creek. Photos of interviewees, tape recording of interviews well defended by Long on page 56. However, there are 26 reasons Bob Heironimus wasn't Queen Kong, the Bigfoot in the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film. A. Hieronymus' initial description of the suit that he wore, especially made by Patterson, is very different from the suit he later agreed that he wore, supposedly supplied by costume maker Philip Morris. Heironimus described the suit he thought Patterson had made as having a zipperless upper torso part that Heironimus donned like putting on a t-shirt, pages 344 to 345. At Bluff Creek, he put on the top. Hieronymus' words, page 349. Asked about the bottom portion, he guessed it was cinched with a drawstring. Morris made a unibody-type union suit that zipped up the back and into which one stepped, page 449. It had no torso part or top like Patterson's supposed top and trousers affair. This difference between them was one he couldn't possibly have mistaken or forgotten. And there were other differences that would have been hard to miss, such as the pronounced difference in hand feel between heavy, supple, rubbery horsehide and the light mesh fabric back Dynel and Morris's. There might be an innocent explanation for Bob Heironimus' changing his story to accommodate Long's Morris suit theory, but it's hard to think of one. B. Heironimus implied that he possessed a suit for only 2 days before Patterson reclaimed it. Heironimus let that implication stand when he reviewed the manuscript. But there is testimony, e.g. pages 47 to 48, 232, 331, and 397, that indicates that he showed off a suit, not described in detail, from his trunk several times over the years, no dates given. Long avoided confronting what this implied and instead, I think as a distraction, fretted over the minor issue of when Heironimus confessed to his buddies to being in the suit. Page 366, pages 370 to 71, and 412. In addition, I've located a witness, G.R., seen in a photo on page 409, to whom Heironimus showed the suit in 1968, a date he is sure of because he was in the armed forces throughout 1967. He described the suit to me in detail, and its features matched neither the Morris suit shown on page 460 nor Queen Kong, namely a top and trousers affair lacking a zipper at the back, i.e., not Morris's back zipper jumpsuit, no rubber waders in the legs, no latex chest piece, no breasts, not made of leather, cotton lined or padded, lightweight, upper portion only 2 or 3 pounds. No shoulder pads, not oversized, no barrel chest or thunder thighs. Hair 4 or 5 inches long. Morris's suit's hair was 1 to 3 inches, page 449. Head not oversized, no helmet inside. Further, Heironimus indicated to others that he currently owned the suit used by Patterson at Bluff Creek. For instance, on page 397, Bernard Hammermeister described being shown the suit in the trunk and said that Heironimus said to him that that's what he wore when he and Patterson and Gimlin went down and did our thing. No date was given. Why didn't Long ask or print the answer? But the familiar way he referred to the filming as our thing suggests that it had been, by then achieved enough fame to be referred to offhandedly like that. Certainly if the suit had been displayed the Friday Heironimus returned from Bluff Creek, his listeners wouldn't have known what he was referring to, since there had been no media coverage of the filming at that point. And Heironimus stated in May 2005 on TV that I didn't tell them what it was when he displayed his suit on his return, i.e., he purposely did not indicate its role. And on page 398 there is another clue that the date was long after the filming. Hammermeister said that Heironimus told him he did it, and he didn't want it spread around for a while, although he had the suit, and he showed him because there was still supposed to be payola that he hadn't received. The word still pretty much rules out the possibility that he displayed the suit immediately after returning from Bluff Creek. There might have been a way Long could have explained Heironimus' possession of a second, suit. But Heironimus' implicit attempt to conceal its existence from readers can't be explained away. It's very damaging to his credibility. The most likely explanation for such evasiveness is to conceal that he was a long-time car trunk ape suit show-off, i.e. he had perhaps been claiming to pals to have hoaxed pre-Patterson local area Bigfoot sightings, page 232, and that his mom's car trunk ape suit sighting fell in that category. C. Heironimus' descriptions, pages 366 to 67 of Bluff Creek's locale are incorrect, especially the distance he traveled up the last road, as John Green noted. Heironimus said 4 or 5 miles, page 348. The map says 20. D. Heironimus plainly implied that Patterson didn't run forward with camera in hand at the start, and that he observed or heard tell of Patterson sitting on horseback and shaking it instead, page 337. See also page 349. The initial phase of the film is a jumble of images, but analysis of the film, pages 375 to 376, proves that Patterson did run forward because the creature is larger, i.e. closer in later frames. E. Heironimus stated in an interview and indicated in the book, page 349, that he walked across Bluff Creek, implying it was dry at the time. But John Green asked knowledgeable government officials if Bluff Creek ever runs dry, and they said no. And even if it had, climbing its 2-foot embankment would have been awkward in a suit. It wouldn't have been part of a hoax, especially if its filming was too jerky to make sense to viewers. F. Heironimus gave 3 details of Patterson's behavior during their Bluff Creek expedition that would have been reasonable if the shooting had occurred the day before the announcement of the filming to the press. These were, page 350, lending Heironimus the suit to take to Yakima, giving Heironimus the film to mail to Diatley and saying he was going back to make tracks that night or the next day. However, 23 and 70 pages later, on page 373 to 74 and 420 to 21, Heironimus and Long claimed that the filming took place in September, perhaps in early September. But in September, none of Patterson's three behaviors would make any sense. There would have been no need for concealment of the suit, nor for speedy delivery of the film, nor for premature track creation, which could have degraded or been discovered in the interim, if no announcement to the press was imminent. Despite his awareness of this fact, Long absurdly stated, page 350, that they, Patterson and Gimlin, didn't want to be caught with the costume, which is why they handed it over to Heironimus for transport. He was apparently relying on readers not rereading the book and noticing the contradiction. G. Another irrationality would have been for Patterson to remove the suit from its sack, page 350, before giving it to Heironimus to take back to Yakima. Why expose it to tumbling and dirtying and possible visibility to bystanders when Patterson reclaimed it, or if Heironimus' mom happened to open the trunk? But Heironimus needed this absurd detail in one blow, H, to enable discovery by his mom. H. Another irrationality is for Patterson to have told Heironimus to leave the suit in his mom's car for him to retrieve when he returned Heironimus' horse for convenience's sake, page 355. But it would have been more convenient and safer for Patterson not to have had to retrieve it at all, but for Heironimus to have dropped it off at Gimlin's, whose house was right off the interstate's exit on Rudkin Road, which Heironimus would have driven past on the way to his mom's in the Idle Hour bar. Patterson and Gimlin had to stop there first anyway to feed, water, and stable their horses. Other possible drop-off locations were Heironimus' own place, then on Hackett Road, just a block off South Wiley Road that led to the Idle Hour, or at Gimlin's parents' then, just a bit off of Tannum Road on the way to and from the Idle Hour, or at a storage locker at a bus or train terminal. If Patterson was so worried about some outsider seeing the suit that he let it out of his hands, surely he would have preferred such methods for their greater security. Further, on page 363, it was pointed out that one of Heironimus' mom's routines was to place apple boxes in the trunk to hold the apples she frequently bought at a local fruit stand. I suspect that she normally did this on a Saturday. So how come Heironimus, knowing that, failed to anticipate and protect against the possibility that she'd discover the suit, ruining everything? I suspect he did anticipate precisely that. It would have been irrational for Patterson to tell Heironimus to mail the film, since Heironimus was heading up to Yakima anyway and could drop it off at Diatley's himself. That would have been cheaper, faster, and safer. The only reason Patterson shipped the film to Diatley was that he intended to remain in Bluff Creek, hoping to catch another sight of the creature, a plan that was abandoned after heavy rains forced him to leave. That makes no sense in Heironimus' scenario. Since Patterson knew the creature was a phony, and since the filming was in September, he wouldn't have hung around longer than the day it took to make the tracks. Certainly no one would credit him with sincerity for doing so. So there'd have been no reason for him to hand the film over to Heironimus. Heironimus apparently didn't think things through and realized this, and instead just figured that since Patterson shipped the film to Yakima, it would make sense for him to claim so too. J. What did Heironimus do with the postal receipt? Patterson would have required such a valuable package to be insured and shipped by registered mail. A receipt would have included the date, the sending location, and the addressee. Powerful stuff. He can't say he discarded it, since Patterson would have told him to keep it until he heard from Patterson the package had been received in good condition. And he wouldn't have discarded it after that point, since he now says he wanted evidence to back up his claim that he was involved in the filming. According to his latest, May 17, 2005, story, he displayed the suit to acquaintances at a tavern upon his return for precisely this purpose. And he can't say he gave it to Patterson either, for one of three reasons. He implies he never encountered him again, page 351, or if he actually did encounter Patterson, it would be implausible for him to have meekly coughed it up, since Patterson's request would have been the perfect opportunity to tell Patterson that he'd hand it over after he got paid, or if he lacked the nerve to say that, unlikely, He could have easily claimed to have discarded it, or at least have left it at home, whereupon he could have made a photo or photocopy before transferring it. K. P&G's making 2 trips to Bluff Creek is unlikely, since they lack the time and money for such gallivanting. It's made unlikelier still by the bright red foliage colors in the PG film, which typically don't occur there until October in that vicinity, in that intensity, and hence couldn't have been filmed in September as Long claims, page 421. Another objection to a September date, as pointed out by John Green, was Heironimus' statement, page 349, that it was October and they had hunters out there. Another objection is that Dehenden's analysis of the light and shadow patterns in the film indicated a late October date. L. Heironimus never described writing or talking to Patterson requesting payment, as he surely would have done if he had a valid claim. He had lost 3 days off from work, 20 hours on the road, travel expenses, a scratch on his mom's car, etc. And he'd been disrespected. So he wouldn't have taken non-payment lying down. And he wasn't a business entity like the phone company who would have turned the matter over to a collection agency. In a realistic scenario, Heironimus, backed if necessary by his 3 brothers, would have become his own collection agency. Heironimus said on page 351 that he tried to run into Roger and Bob a couple of times, but a letter to Patterson putting him on notice that he'd go to the press would have done the trick. And Heironimus never appealed to one of Patterson's 4 siblings or his spouse for assistance in reaching Patterson or in making him see reason and avoid the embarrassment to his family that would ensue from a hoax exposure. This was an obvious point of leverage, and a postcard would have worked. Their addresses were in the phone book, and Heironimus was well acquainted with Patterson's wife, Patty, whom he'd been friendly with since childhood, page 344. M. Heironimus failed to hire a lawyer to threaten to sue Patterson and DeAtley when they were raking in the dough, and a threat of exposure would have had leverage to obtain far more than his $1,000 debt. As Igor Burtsev has pointed out, it would have been absurd for Patterson to have put his whole gravy train and reputation at risk by not paying a relative pittance for Heironimus' silence. N. Heironimus unaccountably failed to complain bitterly about Patterson in private. Possibly he feared if he did so, his friends would then urge him to see a lawyer, and he would lose credibility if he declined. A lawyer would have requested supporting evidence that should then have existed, like his name in the logbook of the motel he stayed at in Eureka, page 350, or the location of the October 19th film site, or records indicating his absence from work. All 3 days were weekdays, according to page 347. O. Heironimus told his friends that he didn't want to publicly make a stink about being stiffed, because he hoped for eventual payment by Patterson, page 398. If so, it would have been irrational for him to have acted as he did, i.e. by occasionally spilling the beans and or showing off the suit. That violated his pledge of confidentiality and amounted to voiding his contract. Rational creditors adopt the opposite policy. They are polite but firm, and studiously avoid giving the debtor an excuse to take umbrage. And given his past soft-spokenness about Patterson, Heironimus' current indignation over others making money, page 336, 340, and 370, is suspiciously peculiar. And why did Heironimus continue to pussyfoot even after Roger's death in 1972? Long stated in a radio interview on the Jeff Rense Show that Heironimus held out hope that if he had kept his promise to keep his mouth shut, he would get paid. In a talk at the Mill Creek Library on January 27, 2005, Greg Long asserted Patricia Patterson continues to sell the rights to the movie. She's made hundreds of thousands over the years. But Heironimus never contacted Patricia Patterson requesting payment, as he surely would have once he realized the film was still garnering TV royalties. It might be that he hesitated to confront Roger Patterson, an irrational hothead, but there should have been no inhibition about approaching an old acquaintance like Patty. Surely she'd have seen the wisdom of paying a little hush money to protect her revenue stream. Since Heironimus says she observed him rehearsing in her husband's Bigfoot costume, page 344, he knew she was aware that the film was a hoax, and he couldn't fob him off with a claim of being unwitting. Long also stated in the Rents interview that although Heironimus never stated this, he was sure Heironimus was concerned about legal ramifications, but there would have been no ramifications in merely contacting Patty or in hiring a lawyer to do so, because that wouldn't have involved a public revelation. Telling his story to a lawyer wouldn't have voided his confidentiality agreement, because Patterson's non-payment had already voided it. And there was no need to accuse Diatley of being in on the hoax. His involvement could have easily been skirted. Anyway, he had nothing to lose. A spontaneous payout was obviously a forlorn hope after 1975, say. And the possible legal ramifications of going public then would have been less than doing so today, because he'd have been able to back up his claim with records that have now been destroyed, like his work attendance records and his signature in the logbook of the Eureka Motel. P. In Long's book, page 370 to 371, Heironimus had denied telling his buddies at the Idle Hour about the suit. However, on Tuesday, May 17, 2005, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, he appeared on the PAX cable network show Lie Detector. The quote below is not from the book, and changed his story. He stated the following on TV. Bob, the next day I drove home and I went to the local watering hole where all those guys hung out. And I lifted the trunk up and said, take a look at this. I didn't tell them what it was. I said, just look at this and do not forget what this looks like. Well, 2 or 3 weeks later, out came the movie, on the television, the film. They said, aha, so that's what you were doing, They brought my horse back the next day, I think it was, and they just took the suit out of the car, and that's the last I ever saw of that original Bigfoot suit. Interviewer, who was Rolanda Watts. Why did you show the suit to those guys? Bob, because I wanted to know, when they found out what it was, that I wasn't lying, that I really did do this. It's suspicious when a claimant changes his story from one that makes him look innocent to one that admits of some guiltiness only when new evidence is brought forward. That's what's happened here. Heironimus has now admitted he violated his confidentiality agreement, and has done so only because critics have harped on the many witnesses who observed Heironimus displaying his suit. Most notably, Michael Dennett's review in the January-February 2005 Skeptical Inquirer. The suspicion is that a claimant who is willing to fib to cover up a little guiltiness might still be doing so. It's also suspicious that he seems to be preparing the ground to claim that he later purchased a second Bigfoot suit with his on-TV words that the last I ever saw of that original Bigfoot suit. This is another revision he has made only when faced by new evidence, a witness to whom he showed an ape suit in 1968. And it's another revision that reveals his initial version as a self-aggrandizing fib, i.e. he claimed to Hammermeister, page 397, that the suit he showed him was the real one used in the film. Again, the suspicion arises that the claimant may be fibbing as much as he can get away with. And it's suspicious that he said on TV, not in the book, the buddies whom he'd shown the suit saw the film of Queen Kong on TV news. 2 or 3 weeks later out came the movie. This contradicts the September filming / October announcement version he gave in the book, pages 373 to 374 and 420 to 421, and implies the hoax filming occurred in October. Q. It's suspicious that Heironimus was evasive with Long, pages 370 to 371, when originally pressed about visiting the Idle Hour upon his return and discussing or displaying the suit. Heironimus avoided specifically denying or confirming going to the Idle Hour or showing the suit off, although that would have been the natural way to answer to Long's probes. Instead, he was deliberately non-responsive, e.g., changing the subject to whether he drank beer there or was a drunkard, thereby leaving wiggle room to later recollect that he had done so. It was a carefully crafted, lawyerly response. R. P.F., Bob's roommate from 1967 through 1970, page 370, told me in June 2004 that he heard nothing about any Bigfoot suit or film hoax. His being ignorant fitted in with Bob Heironimus' initial version, under which he disremembered displaying a suit and minimized his talking about it. But roommate P.F.'s ignorance is implausible under Heironimus' new "I confided in my buddies to obtain witnesses" version. It's more likely that P.F. knew what really went on but was answering me in accordance with the code of the Woosters. Don't let down a pal. S is suspicious that, given that Heironimus said on TV he wanted proof that I'd really done this. He apparently didn't give his buddies more than a guarded peek at a nondescript pile of fur in the back of his trunk. That could have been a Halloween-grade ape suit, and probably was. If he'd really had the goods, he'd have shown off any of the Patterson suit's half-dozen unique features. E.g. breasts, for a start, or a glass eye. And this despite saying that he was trying to get them to notice salient details. I said, just look at this and do not forget what this looks like. Statement on the TV show in May 2005. He didn't take a photo of the suit. He could have bought or borrowed a camera easily, and it would have provided evidence 10 times stronger than saying that 3 of his drinking buddies saw a pile of fur in the back of his trunk. Such a photo could have been sent to Patterson or his relatives and associates. The camera doesn't lie, whereas 3 drinking buddies might stretch a point for a pal. The power of a photo was well known to anyone who read a newspaper or a paperback or seen a movie. He didn't call the motel he'd stayed at and ask them to save the logbook page he'd signed and or send him a photocopy. T. Heironimus took his lie detector test, pages 210 and 356, under his own control, which meant he could have suppressed an unfavorable result. The consensus among experts is that such a non-threatening test environment reduces the subject's anxiety, making it easier for him to pass. And his control may have meant that he knew the questions in advance, which also helps reduce stress. U. Long stated in a videotaped speech on March 27, 2004, that there was a strike in progress at Heironimus' employer, the Boise Cascade Plywood Plant, when Heironimus participated in the filming. Telling Long this might have seemed like a good idea to Heironimus at the time, because it would have partially explained why he participated in Patterson's project without demanding a down payment, and why he failed to aggressively pursue collection of his debt. He was at loose ends and had nothing to lose by spending 3 weekdays in California. However, I have learned from a WCIW union official who was there at the time, HP, that there was no strike, except perhaps for a few one-day wildcat walkouts at that facility in 1967. The most recent strike was in the summer of 1966. Heironimus' false claim could not have been due merely to faulty recollection of a long-past event, because if he had lost money from absenting himself from work, he was paid by the hour. His indignation at that fact would have imprinted itself in his memory. V. Long published only 2 details, pages 363 to 365, of Heironimus' relatives' suit descriptions, a dark face and a stench. These being attributes that support Heironimus' description of Patterson's suit. Long would surely have questioned them on all the other features of the suit and printed either other supporting details they mentioned, e.g. a helmet, a glass eye, shoulder pads, a zipper, rubber waders in the legs, latex chest piece, breasts, etc. The fact that he didn't is therefore significant, i.e. it suggests that those details contradicted Heironimus' tale. This brings to mind the dog that failed to bark, and thereby spoke volumes. I suspect the details they recalled matched those of the suit G.R. saw. These 2 relatives had hours of unfettered access to the suit while Heironimus slept, and one donned its head. Incidentally, Heironimus' mom described the suit as black, page 363, at variance with Morris's emphatically non-black brown suit, page 449. W. In the January 2005 National Geographic special on Bigfoot, Heironimus didn't match Queen Kong's perambulatory style. Heironimus' recreation failed in 2 key features. His knee bent only to an angle of 70 degrees, not to Queen Kong's 90 degrees, and the sole of his foot was never vertical before its toes left the ground. Bill Miller has mentioned this first. Again, unlike Queen Kong's. C.F. Chris Murphy's book Meet the Sasquatch, page 52, frames 72 and 310. It's not easy to incorporate these effects while also walking with Queen Kong's compliant gait. If you try, all you'll achieve is a silly walk, not a QK recreation. Your speed and smoothness will be noticeably reduced, but QK walks with the fluidity of a cat. X. Hieronymus' body proportions don't match Queen Kong, e.g. his torso depth, thighs, and shoulder breadth are much slimmer, and yet Heironimus claimed in an interview that no torso padding was used. More important, his torso and arms are proportionately significantly shorter than QK's, and his legs are longer. His intermembral index ratio of arm length to leg length is about 70, human-like. Queen Kong's is about 85, and as John Green has pointed out, no arm extenders were worn because Queen Kong's sharp elbow bend reveals that her forearm is not disproportionately long. Why? Such extensive suit modifications would have been necessary to produce a torso, head, and limbs as thick and well-defined as Patty's that an expert tailor and lots of extra fur would have been required. So why bother to buy a suit in the first place? Z. Heironimus was not measured for a custom-fitted suit, and the Morris's gorilla suit, like all off-the-peg ape suits, would fit a wearer loosely, even if it had been custom-tailored to the wearer. E.g., in the movie Harry and the Hendersons, Harry has trouser legs, a pair of uniformly tapering tubes. Queen Kong, on the other hand, has a well-defined body, a butt crack in the last frames, bulging thunder thighs, mobile kneecap, shapely calf, visible tendons and hamstrings, shoulder blades, realistic biceps, quivering flesh, non-uniform hair color and length, etc., all features missing from Hollywood ape films. And the photo on page 460 of the Morris suit looks like a fright wig, a comical Abbott and Costello affair. Conclusion. To swallow Hieronymus' story, one must want to believe it, desperately. The rest of us are well justified in being unpersuaded or even derisive. Hieronymus believers should also reflect on the evidence that is lacking in Long's case, such as quotes by Patterson or Gimlin even hinting at a Bluff Creek hoax, an indication by Diatley of a specific reason for suspecting a hoax. His mere belief that Bigfoot can't exist, or so it had to be a hoax, is insufficient. Indeed, Diatley's inability to back up that disbelief, despite his close acquaintance with Patterson and Gimlin in the film's production, actually argues for the film's authenticity. Long argued that if Diatley provided specific reasons, he would be risking his reputation with such a confession. Page 188. But that's silly. He's confessed already. As far as the community is concerned, that's what's important. The details are trivial. A photo or non-Bob Heironimus testimony of Patterson or Gimlin or Diatley with a Patty-like suit. A zipper pull or equivalent in the film. Not just seeing Martian canals in the form of ambiguous dark areas at the waist, page 378 and 383, and spine, page 451 to 452. Indications that the Bluff Creek footprints were mold-made. Long has objected that his critics haven't disproven the witness's testimony about Patterson's character. He's established that Patterson was an occasional moocher and outrageous deadbeat, a person who dishonors his debts, sometimes in a nasty way, as with Vilma Radford. A possible sometime hoaxer of footprints and maybe sightings, if one believes Harvey Anderson implicitly, which I don't. But even on the evidence selected for inclusion by Long, he was also sometimes sincere seeker of prints, page 120, and sightings. And after 1967, he spent money searching for hominids in Thailand and bid on the purported Bossberg Bigfoot body. A would-be hoaxer of an ape suit film in 1961, again according to Anderson, but after viewing that effort in private, he never went public with any ape photo hoaxes, most likely from having come to realize how phony such a recreation looks. That is a bitter experience that poo-pooing debunkers lack, but will acquire when BH's costume in-motion recreation is broadcast. P.S. from 2007. Guess what? It has been withheld from even DVD distribution, presumably because it's embarrassingly bad, according to a neutral witness of the attempt from National Geographic. But again, there is evidence that is lacking in Long's case, such as testimony indicating that Roger was insincere in his belief in Bigfoot. Evidence that Patterson never promoted a phony ape suit photo or film as authentic. Evidence that Patterson promoted knowingly fraudulent products or projects for money, i.e. scams. The only people who do that are, strictly speaking, con men, trying to sell Bigfoot to Yakima residents whose attitudes on the big boy range from the dubious to the derisive. Was an unpromising game one a true con man would have avoided. As Charles Mackay wrote back in the 1850s out of copyright, the man who would cheat the people most needs found his operations must needs found his operations upon some prejudice or belief that already exists. Evidence that Patterson's dishonesty was of the mortal sin, proactive, meat-eating variety, rather than of the venial sin, opportunistic, grass-eating type, e.g. one-time insurance fraud. Long inaccurately implied that he was type 1, a career criminal, calling him a con man, etc. In addition, there is evidence, and there would be more in the book less partisan than Long's, that points to Patterson's sincerity and good traits. And there's a list of, see pages 46, 49, 88 to 89, 91 to 94, 96, 116 to 118, 129, 131 to 132, page 201, 205, 235, 255, 269 to 270, 272, and 397. For other good traits, see pages 72, 113, 116, 122, 128 to 129, 205 to 206, 228, and 270. Finally, it's absurd to believe, as Long does, that it is enough to discredit Patterson to disprove the film. He indicated that Patterson and the film are so closely joined that to destroy Patterson's credibility in the film dies, and that, when it comes to the truthfulness of a fantastic story, other things being equal, the credibility of the storyteller is crucial, page 430. But other things are not equal. There was another witness of excellent character, Gimlin, who has resisted strong provocations by Patterson to expose him. And there is more than a story, there is evidence. The film and the tracks. So readers should not follow Long's specious reasoning. Proving that Patterson was sometimes a dodgy dude is not nearly enough, unless one really wants to believe Heironimus. So that's just part one. There's more, trust me on this. And then we'll get to it in a little bit. Okay, here is part two from Roger Knights. Heironimus versus Heironimus, his 45 story changes. Roger Knights, January 12, 2012, 12,687 words. Contents. Major items are highlighted. Now, I had said in an earlier video that Heironimus had changed his story 37 times. I was inaccurate. It's actually 45 times. And I believe now it's 47 times. I think there's been some added to that. So, anyway, here we are. Introduction, discussion, preview of major changes. Spoiler alert. Yakima contradictions. When was Heironimus approached about suit wearing? Number 2, was Heironimus concerned about possible illegality? Number 3, did Bob Heironimus agree to wear the suit before or while at Tampico? How many meetings were there at Tampico? How many suit try-ons were there? What day did Patterson and Gimlin leave? How many days later did Heironimus depart? Where was the... Well, this essentially is the... What do you call it? The table of contents. But we'll just go ahead and get into it. That's just the table of contents. I don't know why I was trying to read that off. Anyway, introduction. Greg Long. He, Bob Heironimus, has never changed his story. Interviews provided to Rents.com with Greg Long, Michaela Cochise, and Cal Korf at Rents.com/rentsinterviews.html. And Rob McConnell. You have never altered your story. No reason to alter it. The truth is the truth. X-Zone radio interview, August 6, 2007. If Long and McConnell had been thinking critically, they'd have noticed many story alterations. When the story has been told in broadcast interviews, even more changes will be apparent to a person who has transcripts to review and compare. To To do that, I transcribe the interviews from the audio. The full transcripts are posted elsewhere on this site so you can look them over yourself. I list 45 story changes here. Most are my own finds, but many were first posted by others on BigfootForums.com. I refer to the original version of the site, which has been lost due to hacking. Within each story change item, except number 35, quotes are listed chronologically. I've highlighted the heading lines of the 25 major items, 56% of the total. I've omitted a few additional items either because they were trivial or because they didn't have enough detail to be sure they were real changes. Discussion. The judicial system considers story changes to be suspicious. That's because an alibi that has no roots in reality is more likely to show significant variations, and more of them than a true account. A person with a phony alibi is less likely to flesh out its bare bones consistently, especially when long gaps intervene. If his tale were rooted in reality, he wouldn't lose the plot very often, or very badly. Therefore, as is well known, police departments make a practice of repeatedly questioning a suspect to see if such variations emerge. Excuse me. In defense of Bob Heironimus, it could be said that it's unnatural if a story is rigidly unchanging. If there were no variations, it would be too pat. Further, in recollecting a complex, long-ago event, a few story variations and additions are only to be expected because, for instance, as recent research has established, memory is not merely retrieved, rather it is partially reconstructed, so it won't be reconstructed the same way each time. Over time, some people clear their memories of minor points. Some people forget it's a kindness not to bore their audience or themselves by telling the same exact account every time, or by inflicting every trivial detail on them. But Bob Heironimus' story changes are numerous. Even 7 changes would be incriminating. He's rung up 6 times more. Bob Heironimus has done himself proud. In defense of Heironimus, it could be said that many of those changes are either minor or debatable. The latter being items where there is room for interpretations, also known as wiggle room. But it won't do to say that the minor items don't count. They do count. At a minimum, they exhaust Bob Heironimus' quota of forgivable flubs. They should still give partial debits to Heironimus. And even if you did find an interpretation to explain the debatable items away, or pretended to yourself that you had, you'd still have the 25 major ones left. And they weigh against the likelihood of the minor changes being innocent. It's been said quantity has a quality all its own. In other words, the quantity of Bob Heironimus' improvisations, retouches, and missteps has the quality of baloney. So when viewed as a whole, Heironimus' account rings false, and therefore it doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt in debatable cases. The likelihood is that they're of a piece with the rest of his yarn. In defense of Heironimus, it could be said that he suffers from memory loss. The event occurred a long time ago, and he's a senior citizen. But this isn't a long-forgotten or minor event that he's suddenly been asked to dredge up from his memory banks. It was a key event in his life, as he realized at the time. He's kept turning it over in his mind whenever he brooded over being cheated out of the $1,000 that was promised him. And he regularly had his memory of the event stimulated by having to field inquiries as to whether he was the man in the suit. Further, Heironimus has undercut any bad memory defense by heatedly denying to Long that his memory is playing tricks on him, Long, page 416, and by not being too proud to admit ignorance. When I asked him a question he couldn't answer, he simply said, "I don't know that," or "I don't remember," Long, page 341. He doesn't sound like he's all at sea. Preview of major changes. Spoiler alert. Because 25 items were particularly suspicious, I graded them as major. I consider it suspicious if a story change is extreme, even if it affects only a minor aspect of the tale. In these cases, the new version is starkly different from the old one. Was the film right alongside the road? Yes. No. Did Heironimus sleep overnight in Eureka? Yes. No. No. Yes. After a clear-cut situation about which an honest mistake is hard to imagine, and these are just Alright, C. Patches up the story to account for new evidence or new witnesses, especially when the prior phony version made the claimant look good, as in the first 5 items below. And you can see all this. Improves the story by removing an implausible element. Polishes the raconteur's image and is evasive. Now that's A through F. Alright, Yakima contradictions. We're going to get into that first. Number 1. When was Heironimus first approached about suit wearing? July or August? It was July or August 1967. Gilman said that Roger was going to make a film and they needed someone to wear the suit. The Making of Bigfoot, page 342. Rob McConnell. When was the first time you ever heard of Bigfoot? Heironimus. Actually, it was in 1967, about September. Roger come up with a big scheme, you know, and he needed some big, hefty guy, a stout guy like me, to wear the suit. So he contacted Bob and asked if Bob would talk to me. Comment. Actually, the first time he had ever heard of Bigfoot in connection with Patterson was in May, when Heironimus and the boys were actors in Patterson's Bigfoot documentary, which was shot behind his house southwest of Tampico over the course of 3 days. There's a photo of the actors on horses in Long's book on page 39. Other pages where the documentary is discussed are pages 46, 71, 109 to 111, and 228 to 229. Number 2, was Heironimus concerned about possible legality? Unconcerned. Jeff Rentz, you were aware then that you were participating in what could have been, I don't know if you knew how big, but certainly a fraud. Heironimus, it didn't, bother me at that time. I didn't care what they'd done with the film they made, just so I got my $1,000. Jeff Rentz, radio show interview, March 1st, 2004. Heironimus, wearing the suit didn't matter to me. I was 26 years old. I didn't give a damn about anything. The Making of Bigfoot, page 344. Concerned. Heironimus, I went up to Roger's place, which is about 14 miles above our place here, and he asked me if I'd wear the suit, and I said, okay, as long as nothing's illegal, I'll do it for you. X-Zone radio interview, August 6, 2007. Comment. Given Heironimus's I didn't care attitude expressed in box 1, he would not likely have inserted the not if it's illegal proviso described in box 2. In other words, it's more likely that he's changed his story than just added a detail, because it's incongruous. But even if the latter is all it was, adding on still amounts to suspicious embroidery, especially because it's image polishing embroidery. Number 3, did Heironimus agree to wear the suit before or while at Tampico? Number 4, how many meetings were there at Tampico? Number 5, how many suit try-ons were there? Heironimus has contradicted himself on all 3 questions. He said he agreed to wear the suit before he met Patterson in Tampico, but he's also said he didn't agree until he got there. He has said the first meeting at Tampico involved only a meeting of the minds, but he's also said it included a suit try-on as well. He said he's tried on the suit once, but he's also said twice. Number 1, agreed to wear before Tampico meeting. 2 meetings, 1 try-on. I never really talked to Roger. The first time I'd sat down with him was at Tampico. He wasn't trying to sell me on the thing. Because you already agreed to wear the suit? Heironimus, nodded affirmatively. It was to seal the deal. He wanted to make sure I would do it and I wouldn't tell anybody. I promised him. Shortly after that, they had the suit done. They said I had to go up to the South Fork and try on the suit and make sure it fit. At the second meeting, finally he said, that's perfect, that's the way I want it. The Making of Bigfoot, pages 343 to 44, and page 346. Comment. No second try-on was described. It would have been superfluous in light of Heironimus's perfect, and 5 lines after Long's book moves on to describing the preparations for the meetup at Bluff Creek. Number 2, agreed to wear while at Tampico. 2 or 3 meetings, 2 try-ons. Tell us how you met Roger Patterson. This is from Rob McConnell. Gimlin said that they were going to make a movie of this Bigfoot suit. He said they were going to sell it to the movie people and make a lot of money. He asked me to see Patterson, so I went to his place. He said, We'll give you $1,000 to wear the suit. It won't take over 10 minutes. So I agreed to do it. I tried the suit on at his place a couple of times. It's not specified if the first try occurred then and there. X-Zone radio interview, December 7th, 2006. Comment: why has Heironimus added a second try-on? Maybe because he or one of his advisors realized it would make a more believable account if there had been a second fitting. It's implausible that his suit fit tightly around it. To repeat my comment under item number 1, Heironimus, quote-unquote, met Patterson months earlier, in May, during 3 days filming his documentary. Number 3, agreed to wear while at Tampico. Number 1 meeting, 1 try-on. I went up to Roger's place, which is about 14 miles above our place here. Oh, you've already seen that. More chit-chat in the same vein follows. So I tried the suit on. He showed me how he wanted me to walk, and I passed his inspection. He said, that's the way I want it, perfect, and so I went home. X-Zone radio interview, August 6, 2007. Similarly, on the Jeff Rentz show, March 1st, 2004, Heironimus said he had made the agreement at Tampico, not before. Comment: seemingly the try-on mentioned in box 3 just above occurred at the same meeting where he agreed to wear the suit. But in Long's book, page 346, he said that it happened at a subsequent meeting. See the last paragraph of text box 1 on the previous page. Incidentally, here's a little bit of embroidery and added detail not mentioned initially about adjustments. It meets his need for a more plausible story, one in which some fitting of the suit was done. And I agreed to try the suit on, and he done a few adjustments there. Tom Biscardi, show interview, March 14th, 2007. Number 6, what day did Patterson and Gimlin leave? Number 7, how many days later did Heironimus depart? Number 8, where was the rendezvous to be? Heironimus has been all over the map on these 3 questions. He first said Patterson and Gimlin left Friday or Saturday. Then he said Sunday. He first said that they left 4 or 5 days before him. Then he said 2 days. Then 3 days. Finally, it was 1 or 2 weeks. He first said the rendezvous was Willow Creek. Then he changed it to Witchpeck. Note, I've calculated the number of days later after P&G's departure that Bob Heironimus departed as follows. Saturday makes sense as the day Heironimus' mom saw the suit, because that was likely her shopping day, and because Heironimus would more likely have slept in on a Saturday than a weekday. Therefore, he drove home on Friday. Therefore, he slept Thursday night in Eureka, which was the day of the filming. Therefore, he drove down the day before on Wednesday. Wednesday would have been October 4th. Wednesday matches one of the days Heironimus gave as his departure in the 3rd text box below. Patterson and Gimlin left Friday or Saturday, so Heironimus left 4 or 5 days later to agree with the Wednesday filming meet-up at Willow Creek. They told me how to get there. Go to Willow Creek. I think Roger and Bob left on a Friday or Saturday. The Making of Bigfoot, page 347. The day Patterson and Gimlin left was not specified. Monday implied. Heironimus left 2 days later. Meet up at Witchpeck. They picked up a horse of mine and told me to come down a couple of days later and to meet me at a gas station outside of town in the little town indistinct Witchpeck. Jeff Rentz radio show interview, March 1st, 2004. P&G left Sunday, so Heironimus left 3 days later. Meet up at Witchpeck. They, Patterson and Gimlin, wanted me to meet them at Witchpeck, California on a Wednesday. They left on a Sunday. X-Zone radio interview, December 7th, 2006. Day P&G left was unspecified. Heironimus left 7 to 14 days later. Meet-up place unspecified. Interviewer Jim Pearson reporting what Heironimus told him. Heironimus loaned his horse to Chico to Patterson and Gimlin, who left for California a week or 2 after Heironimus. Coffee with Bigfoot, Marlene's Upper Valley Press, January and February 2007. Number 9. How long was Heironimus away from Yakima? Number 10. Was Heironimus' employer on strike during the filming? Here's the summary of differences in Heironimus' versions of these events. First, he said his days away were 3. Then he said 5 days. First, he told Long he didn't miss work because his employer was on strike. Then he said he missed a week's work and pay. 3 days. Work that is unspecified. No strike mentioned. According to Greg Long, Heironimus' part in the entire operation had taken 3 days. The Making of Bigfoot, page 350. Days Gone Unspecified, strike. Greg Long. Bob Heironimus was not working at the time. Boise Cascade was on strike. He had the time to go down there. Videotaped speech to the International Bigfoot Society in Portland, Oregon, March 27, 2004. I think this was between 15 and 25 minutes into his talk. After I pointed out on Bigfoot forums that there had been no strike at Boise and Cascade in 1967, Heironimus changed his story. 5 days, no strike. Interviewer Jim Pearson. Bob missed a week's work when he went down to California. The Unmaking of Bigfoot. Marlene's Upper Valley Press, January and February 2007. Interviewer Jim Pearson. Bob had been stiffed to the tune of weeks' lost wages and $1,000. Bob goes public. Marlene's Upper Valley Press, January and February 2007. Number 11. Did Heironimus ever see Patterson after the filming? No, didn't see later. Jeff Rentz. Did they contact you after the film was processed? No, I never saw Roger after that. Jeff Rentz radio interview, March 1st, 2004. Yes, saw occasionally. Tom Biscardi. Did you ever bother him, Patterson, or keep pestering at him for your $1,000? I never run into him very much. Tom Biscardi radio show, May 17th, 2007. And then we have Bluff Creek contradictions. What was the mileage for the meet up to Bluff Creek Road, and from there how many miles to the campsite? Summary. First he said 3 plus 4 minus 5, 7.5, then 2 minus 3 plus 2, 4.5, then 5 minus 10 plus long, 10 to 20. 3 miles, then 4 or 5 miles. We drove, it seems like about 3 miles out of town, and then we come to Bluff Creek Road and turned to the right and went up into the mountains there about, it seems to me like about 4 miles, maybe 5 miles. The Making of Bigfoot, pages 347 to 348. 2 or 3 miles, then 2 miles. Greg Long. He, Heironimus, brought to the kitchen table a crudely drawn map. The map indicated he had traveled 2 or 3 miles west on the main highway outside Willow Creek, turned right or north onto the Bluff Creek Road, then drove 2 miles up a hill. The Making of Bigfoot, page 366. 5 or 10 miles, then how many miles? Unspecified. We drove maybe 5 or 10 miles up the highway. I don't remember exactly. We turned right onto a gravel road and pulled up this long hill. The Making of Bigfoot, page 404. Was the film site right by the roadside? Yes, by roadside. We took the horses in the suit up the road to the place they had picked out for the filming. Got off the horses. We looked around there to check see if anybody was around, listened for any cars coming up the road, and heard nothing. So we went, and right there they put the suit on me. Told me to go across here this dry creek bed. Jeff Rentz, radio interview, March 1st, 2004. No, off-road. And the next morning we saddled up the horses. I rode up to this place. It was off the road quite a ways so nobody could see us, and had this place picked out, and they helped me get in the suit again. Tom Biscardi radio interview, March 14th, 2007. This change is suspicious because previously I and others on BFF, that's Bigfoot Forums, had pointed out that Bluff Creek Road is hundreds of feet from the film site, so this change seems an attempt to patch a hole in his story. Even if it isn't, it's a change about a circumstance that an actual participant would likely have remembered clearly. Or if he didn't have a good recollection of it, he wouldn't have definitively said right there by the road in one description, but off the road quite a ways in another, as though the incident was clear in his mind. Therefore, for either or both these reasons, this is a major change. Incidentally, on page 348 of Long's book, Heironimus drew a map showing the film site in relation to the road and the campsite. For some reason, Long didn't see fit to include it in his book, nor on his website, although it is a vital piece of evidence. It would resolve such questions as, was this site to the left or the right of the road? A similar comment applies to Bob Heironimus' map of his route from the meetup at the gas station to the film site on page 366. Both maps should be put on the record on Long's website, Northwest Mysteries. Number 15. How did P&G approach Bob Heironimus after the filming? On horses. I yelled back at them, "Get this SB off me right now." They come running over on their horses and started shirking the suit off. Jeff Rentz radio interview, March 1st, 2004. on foot. Roger and Bob came running over there and they jerked the head of that suit off and helped me get out of that thing. X-Zone Radio interview, August 6, 2007. Comment. Heironimus employed an unusual way of phrasing things in his first quotation above. It's unidiomatic to say a person runs on a horse. If that's his habit, perhaps the second quotation also implied Patterson and Gimlin were on horseback, and there's no contradiction. Perhaps. Number 16. Were the two horses saddled when Bob Heironimus left his suit? I yelled back at them, "Get this SB off me right now." And they come running over on their horses and started shirking the suit off. Comment. P&G weren't riding bareback, presumably. Not saddled. I took the suit off, we saddled up, we put the suit on the back of the horse, and we rode back to camp. Tom Biscardi, show interview, March 14, 2007. Who put the film in the mailing envelope? Well, he had an envelope there mailed to Yakima, and he said, put the film in it and take this to Eureka, California, the post office. Tom Biscardi, show interview, March 14, 2007. Patterson put the film in. Roger already had an envelope, a package, prearranged. All he done was shove the film in it. I took it to Eureka and mailed it home. Number 18. Who put the suit in the trunk? Patterson and Gimlin put the suit in. Greg Long. Patterson and Gimlin laid it in the suit in the trunk of the Buick. This had to have been based on what Heironimus told him. The Making of Bigfoot, page 350. Bob Heironimus put the suit in. I put the suit in the back of the car, my car. X-Zone Radio interview, December 7, 2006. Comment. On BigfootForums.com, I pointed out the contradiction above, whereupon BH corrected himself the next time he was interviewed. Patterson and Gimlin put the suit in. They put the suit in the car. Tom Biscardi Radio Show interview, March 14, 2007. Number 19. What were Patterson's track stoppers made of? The stoppers were plaster. They said in the meantime they were going to take those plaster casts that Roger had and go back up and make the tracks that they wanted. Seth Shostak Internet Radio interview, August 1st, 2004. So they took their plaster casts out and went back and mashed them down into there, as I was going to Eureka. Roger had made those plaster casts. There were 2 or 3 guys around here that had those casts. One guy was named Prentice Beck. Tom Biscardi Radio Show interview, May 17, 2007. Heironimus. As far as the footprints go after the film was filmed, we headed back to the car and they went back with the plaster casts, smashed them down in the white sand where I was walking through this creek bed. X-Zone Radio interview, August 6, 2007. Stoppers composition unknown. Henry May. Don't you know, that's me by the way, don't you know that the plaster is very delicate and that if you step on it, like if you're 150 or 200 pounds, that you could break those casts? Well, they didn't break. I didn't stand on them myself. And I'm sure they didn't break. Rob McConnell. Is it possible that the casts were made of some other material besides plaster? There's been so many casts made. Some of them even wood and around this part of the country. I don't know exactly what casts they had. X-Zone Radio interview, August 6, 2007. Number 20. Was a next day announcement planned? No announcement planned. They said they had to go back and make tracks. We have to go back and make them. We'll either do it today or tomorrow. We're out of here and come home. Greg Long. Why do you think they asked you to take the suit with you? Well, I don't know. I guess to get it home before somebody saw it. I never thought about it. The Making of Bigfoot, page 350. Comment. That statement, which Heironimus attributed to Patterson and Gimlin right after the filming, implicitly ruled out any film announcement being in the offing. They said they were going home right after making the tracks. Furthermore, Heironimus conspicuously failed to claim knowledge the way he did later on the Tom Biscardi show, below, of any supposed planned announcement of Patterson and Gimlin's. He would have told Long about it if he'd had such knowledge. It's a change of story of the most suspicious sort. Yes, next day announcement planned. They were going to go downtown there to the local newspaper, media, or whatever, and announce they had seen the Bigfoot. So they put the suit in my car so that nobody would see the suit in the back of the truck. Tom Biscardi, show interview, March 14, 2007. The most likely reason he changed his story is to patch up the hole I poked in it in my Amazon review of Long's book, where I pointed out in item G that it would have been senseless for Patterson to have given the suit to Heironimus unless the film announcement were imminent. My Amazon, and he has a link to his Amazon review, which I just went over for y'all a little while ago. Number 21. Did a next day film announcement occur? No next day announcement. The filming was much earlier than October 20th. Greg Long. Bob Heironimus told me that he drove to the Bluff Creek area in either September or October 1967. However, if Heironimus saw the Bigfoot Jamboree banner stretched across the highway upon his entrance into Happy Camp around the time of the Labor Day weekend in early September, then Patterson shot his film long before October 20th. The Making of Bigfoot, pages 420 and 421. No next day announcement. The filming was much earlier than October 20th. And it was hot, around the 1st October, and I was sweating. And after he got through filming, there was a big hole there, and I jumped down that hole. Because it was the 1st of October, which would be hunting season. In that part of the woods, and all the time walking down through there, I was worried about somebody shooting me. X-Zone radio interview, August 6, 2007. Yes, next day announcement. The filming occurred only one day earlier. The reason I brought the suit home in the trunk of the car is because after they went back and made the tracks, they headed for town to announce that they had filmed the Bigfoot. They didn't want anybody seeing that, maybe taking a chance on having somebody see it, so I brought it home in the trunk of the car. Rob McConnell. So you mean they announced that they had filmed Bigfoot before the film was developed? Yes. Huh. Interesting. And did it catch on right away? Did the press gobble the entire story? Oh, yeah, they ate that right up. X-Zone radio interview, August 6, 2007. Comment. Patterson's announcement to the Eureka Times Standard didn't occur until October 20th, as its October 21st story explicitly stated. So it's not possible for Heironimus to credibly revise the story to include an immediate announcement because the September-October phrase above forecloses it. Once he allowed September filming date as a possibility, he implied that there had been a lengthy gap between the filming and the announcement. Given that lengthy gap, his or October phrase implied a date only in the month's first half, e.g. the first or second week of October. The Biscardi interview. This fundamental story change is very damaging to Heironimus. It's obviously self-serving because his prior version was so flagrantly implausible it had to be abandoned for two reasons. Number one, because Lyle Laverty's testimony, which I listed and posted, established that there had been no tracks at the site before October 19th. Number two, because Patterson wouldn't have given Heironimus the suit unless he planned an immediate announcement to the press. I suspect the reason Heironimus initially adopted the delayed announcement version was to accommodate Long's need for there to be a lengthy delay between the filming and the announcement. That's because Long figured the film couldn't have been developed on October 21st. My belief would be confirmed if the tape version Heironimus told reporter Jim Gosney in 1981 is found to describe an immediate announcement. P.S. On October 19th, filming clashes with Bob Heironimus' estimated 2 to 3 week gap. The next day I drove home, and 2 or 3 weeks later out came the movie, on the television, the film. PAX Cable TV show Lie Detector, May 17, 2005. That's because snippets from the film were broadcast nationally in late October, according to Morris, page 448, and also according to a Bigfooter whose name I've lost, who posted a recollection of it to a Bigfoot email list. In other words, the delay was 10 days at most. Number 22. Did Heironimus sleep overnight in Eureka? Yes, slept overnight. He stayed overnight in Eureka, and he remembered renting a room in a small building whose siding was made of logs. The next day he drove home to Yakima, Making a Bigfoot, page 350. No, drove home. I took the film to Eureka, mailed the film, and took off for home. X-Zone radio interview, December 7, 2006. Interviewer Jim Pearson reporting what Bob Heironimus told him. Bob started for home, stopping in Eureka to mail the unprocessed 8mm film to Yakima. He drove straight through, parked his mother's Buick, and went to bed. Comment. On BigfootForums.com, I pointed out the contradiction above, whereupon Heironimus corrected himself in his next interview. I took it to Eureka and mailed it, stayed overnight there. Tom Biscardi Radio Show, interview, March 14, 2007. Comment. It's hard to justify this story change as an innocent mix-up. Because, among other things, if he'd slept in Eureka, he'd have driven home in daylight 3/4 of the way. If he'd driven straight home from Eureka, If he'd slept in Eureka, he'd have driven home in daylight 3/4 of the way. If he'd driven straight home from Eureka, he'd have driven home in darkness 3/4 of the way. That difference would have left an impression in his memory and made it hard to forget what time he left. The above assumes a 3 p.m. start from Eureka based on a noon departure from the film site. Heironimus estimated the filming occurred between 11 and noon in his first X-Zone interview, December 7, 2006. Confidentiality and confession-related contradictions. Number 23. Did Heironimus promise Patterson absolute secrecy? Patterson said, "Don't reveal this to anybody. This is top secret." He wanted to make sure I would do it, and I wouldn't tell anybody, either then or after the film was made. I promised him. Heironimus merely promised he wouldn't tell the media. I'd promised them, P&G, I would not tell the media or the news or the television of any of these people. Seth Shostak's Skeptical Sunday Internet Radio Show, August 1st, 2004. A similar statement was made in the Jeff Rense interview on March 1st, 2004. Comment. His second revised version of what he promised Patterson made it retroactively okay for him to have displayed the suit to his buddies and to have told Hammermeister. 24. Did Heironimus go to the Idle Hour bar? Number 25. Did he implicitly reveal the hoax to his buddies? Number 26. Did he explicitly tell anyone there about the hoax? No bar, no show, no tell. Heironimus didn't go to the bar, so he could reveal nothing. I mailed the film. I stayed there in Eureka overnight. I started back the next morning. I got home, 14 hours or whatever, it was later, and I kind of went in the house and went to sleep. And that was from the Jeff Rense interview. Yes, bar, but didn't remember revealing the suit. Long. Do you remember talking to the guys at the Idle Hour Tavern? Heironimus. I just don't remember. He shook his head. I just don't remember. He was genuinely puzzled. Making a Bigfoot, page 405. See also pages 370 to 371. Comment. There's a good reason he didn't tell Long that he'd shown off the suit the night he returned, because then Long would have asked the supposed witnesses if that was when and where they saw it, and they'd have denied it. They'd have said, as Hammermeister told me, that they'd seen it years later, provided Long interviewed them without Heironimus present, which he failed to do with Hammermeister. After Long was off his case, his current version emerged. Yes bar, yes show, no tell. Heironimus deliberately revealed the suit, but told no one his purpose. The next day I drove home, and I went to the local watering hole where all us guys hung out. And I lifted the trunk up and said, take a look at this. I didn't tell them what it was. I said, just look at this, do not forget what this looks like. Lie Detector TV show, May 17th, 2005. I promised him I wouldn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody it was a Bigfoot suit. Biscardi, show interview, March 14, 2007. Comment. I believe the reason he said I didn't tell them what it was to mesh with his claim to Long that he didn't remember talking about the suit in the bar. That denial deceived Long implicitly by failing to answer what Long was really asking. Did you let the cat out of the bag? Long couldn't have known to specifically ask if Heironimus had silently given his buddies the bit of knowledge they needed to make the connection on their own. So Heironimus didn't come clean. Instead, he responded only to the question's literal meaning, dancing around the point of the inquiry. This failure to correct an interrogator's misperception is deliberately misleading and therefore counts as lying. It contradicts his supporter's claim that he's made a full confession and has nothing to hide. Yes bar, yes show, yes tell. Heironimus deliberately revealed the suit and told Hammermeister its purpose. Heironimus, paraphrase, I showed Hammermeister the suit the night that I returned. Personal communication to Roger Knights, April 11, 2006. But he told Hammermeister what the suit was for when he showed it to him. Here are Hammermeister's statements from Long's book. Hammermeister, he told me he did it, and he didn't want it spread around for a while. He had the suit, and he trusted his friends, and he showed us. And there was still supposed to be payola on this thing, and he didn't have it. Making a Bigfoot, page 398. Quoted by Hammermeister, that's what I wore when we went down and did our thing. The Making a Bigfoot, page 397. Heironimus, paraphrased. Although Hammermeister recently told you that the suit show-off event occurred at least a year after I returned from Bluff Creek, his recollection was faulty. He's just admitted that to me. Personal communication to Roger Knights, April 11, 2006. Comment. Heironimus has managed to get his friend to change his story, or his friend has spontaneously realized his faux pas and changed it on his own. I'm not surprised, because it would be fatal to Hieronymus' fable if it were to come out that Heironimus had been showing it off around town for years, after he told Long that Patterson had retrieved the suit 2 days after the filming. But in doing so, he's jumped out of the frying pan and into the soup, i.e. he's contradicted his repeated assertions that he told no one at the bar about the suit, and he's provoked my repost. Will Hammermeister take a lie detector test at my expense? I'll also give him $200 for his time. This offer extends to any other of my suit witnesses whom Bob H. has induced to recant, as well as to his nephew John Miller, a supportive but very bashful suit witness. Contact Randy... Okay. I'm not sure who that is. Apparently, yeah, I have no idea who that is. No bar, no show, no tell. Jim Pearson. Bob, a 26-year-old bachelor who lived with his mother, drove straight home in her car, parked it, and went to sleep. The Unmaking of Bigfoot. An interview with Bob H. in January and February 2007. Issues of Marlene's Upper Valley Press. Now we're back to square one. Number 27. How soon did Hieronymus' buddies realize the suit's purpose? 2 to 3 weeks later. Well, 2 or 3 weeks later, out came the movie, on the television, the film. They said, aha, so that's what you were doing. Lie Detector TV show, May 17, 2005. At once, I said, take a look at this. Do not forget what this looks like. Well, right away, they knew right then what I'd been doing. X-Zone radio interview, December 7, 2006. Number 28. Did his mom, Opal, ask Heironimus about the suit? Didn't ask. Opal estimated she found the suit at 10 a.m. the following day. Heironimus woke up later that morning or afternoon, but Opal did not confront him. The following morning, Opal or Bob discovered that the suit wasn't in the car's trunk, but neither one of them ever brought up the issue of why the suit had been in the trunk or why and how it disappeared. Making a Bigfoot, page 366. Asked. Reporter. His mother, Opal, found the gorilla suit in the trunk of her Buick the next day. It really scared her at first. She wanted to know what was going on, and I said, you'll figure it out. She saw the film on television and knew immediately. Bigfoot hoax goes in halls of Huey. Leah Ward, Yakima Herald Republic, October 7, 2004. One day, as he and his mother watched TV, the Bigfoot film clip came on. Opal looked at her son and said, that's the costume that was in my car trunk. What trunk, wasn't it? Her son refused to answer. Jim Pearson, The Unmaking of Bigfoot, one part of a 3-part interview series of Heironimus in the January and February 2007 issues of Marlene's Upper Valley Press. Number 29. Who leaked the news about the suit? Who did you tell your story to first? My family, and then probably my wife's family. After my mom saw the suit and it leaked out from her that it was in the back of the car, well, most people around here did know it. Making a Bigfoot, page 356. The above implied that the news leaked out because his aunt, nephew, and mom spread the word about an ape suit in his trunk in the wake of Patterson's announcement. That way, Heironimus would have been innocent of letting the cat out of the bag at the bar. That was what he wanted readers of Long's book to believe, because he was claiming at that point that he didn't remember revealing it there. But in the quote below, he changed his story so that the leak occurred via his deliberate boasting to his idle hour buddies. He had to do this to accommodate the numerous people who see him show off the suit, but he had to wait until Long was off the case, or at least after his book had been published before he could make his confession, his modified limited hangout to the facts. Heironimus's barroom buddies leaked. There was probably 50 to 100 people that knew when the first time they saw that film that it was me, because 6 people in the bar saw the suit and it leaked out from them after that. Tom Biscardi, Internet Radio Interview, March 14, 2007. Number 30. If asked, was it you in the suit? When did Bob H. first say yes? Admitted in 1969 or 1971. After about 4 years, I decided everybody knew that it was me anyway where we lived out there. They would say, "Was it really you?" And I'd say, "Yes, it was. I just let the cat out of the bag." XL radio interview, December 7th, 2006. Tom Biscardi, why didn't you come forward a lot sooner? I did, actually, about a year and a half. I got to where I didn't give a damn, and I finally said, yes, it was me. And that's from the Biscardi interview from March 14th, 2007. Admitted in 1999. Well, after I saw that television show called The World's Greatest Hoaxes, I decided it was time to let people know that it was a hoax. A year and a half after we made the film, I never got paid. And I was waiting around to get paid. And I decided then, too, if somebody asked me, was it really you in the suit, I didn't deny it, and I didn't say yes or no. I'd given my word I wouldn't say anything about it. And that, again, is from the same Biscardi radio interview. Comment. Here's a fair rephrasing of that statement. Until World's Greatest Hoaxes was aired in December 1998, I didn't never admit publicly, i.e. to inquiring strangers, that I'd been in the suit. It was a matter of principle. But in that same interview and in an earlier one, First Box, he flatly contradicted his statement that I didn't say yes or no. Heironimus has often faced an awkward question. It's been a number of years since Roger passed away, and any promise to him should have been over by then. Since you didn't get paid, why wait until just now? That question was in fact posed by call-in listeners to his two interviews. He had a choice of two possible answers. One reply was to stand on principle. I was bound by my promise of silence to Roger. The other reply was to deny that he kept quiet. Well, actually, I did fess up, but nobody outside my neighborhood was paying attention. Both responses are tempting, but they're mutually exclusive. He must choose one and avoid the other. But Bob Heironimus succumbed to temptation. A deceptive defense of Heironimus' statement could be offered. He initially adopted a no-comment policy, but gave it up after 4 years and just didn't spell it out in fine detail in his Tom Biscardi interview. Indeed, this is the only defense that could be offered. But that is just a polite way of saying that he chose to reveal, or to conceal an awkward fact, i.e. be strategically economical with the truth in order to duck a tough question. 31. Did Bob Heironimus talk to the media prior to seeing World's Greatest Hoaxes in 1999? Didn't talk to media before 1999. I promised them I would not tell the media or the news or the television or any of those people. South Shostak's Skeptical Sunday Internet Radio Show, August 1st, 2004. Heironimus, I kept this quiet for 35 years from the media, from the television people. Everybody around here knew it, but it was no big deal. Did talk to media before 1999. By the way, that was from the X-Zone interview, that last comment. Did talk to the media before 1999. Greg Long. Bob Heironimus opened up to a newspaper reporter, Jim Gosney, who befriended him and told him his story many times starting in 1981. In the Q&A for Making a Bigfoot, item number 13, online at rents.com. Did Heironimus come forward with money in mind? Yes, sought money for his yarn. The man who was in the suit wanted help in negotiating a deal for the rights to his story. David Watson. Bigfoot Unzipped, Yakima Herald Republic, January 30th, 1999, quoting a press release from Bob Heironimus' lawyer, Barry Woodard of Zillah, Washington. The Zillah lawyer's office has been inundated with calls from media outlets. We're just sort of waiting for the dust to settle, he said, explaining he and his client are evaluating offers. David Watson. Bigfoot believers say film, no fake. Yakima Herald Republic, February 4th, 1999. Heironimus telling Gimlin, it's time I made some money out of this thing. I'm blowing the whistle. Making a Bigfoot, page 340. Greg Long. On October 24th, 1999, I called Heironimus. Hey, it's been 9 months since his attorney's press release on January 30th, 1999, and nothing's come out. Why hasn't anyone bought your story, Bob? Heironimus. Well, we're trying, he said in his sing-song voice. I'm not going to give it away. The Making of Bigfoot, page 313. Through the spring and summer of 2000, I thought often of Heironimus' bitter holdout as he tried to milk the last few dollars from a dead man's scam. Making a Bigfoot, page 314. I was never paid a dime for that. No, sir, he said. Adding, sure, I want to make some money. I feel that after 36 years, I should get some of it. Man admits I was Bigfoot. Richard Levy, Washington Post, March 7, 2004. Is Heironimus gaining financially from his confession? Greg Long. No, he is not. If there is a Bigfoot TV special, Bob Heironimus should be paid for something. Greg Long's reply to John Green on Long's site. And then shortly after the show, World's Greatest Hoaxes was on, which was broadcast on December 28, 1998, I get a phone call from a lawyer who called me up and said, I represent the guy who was in the suit and it wasn't the guy you pointed to. He'd be more than willing to go on television if we could strike the right deal. Bob Kiviat, producer of World's Greatest Hoaxes, on the Jeff Rense radio show interview, March 1st, 2004. No, Heironimus came forward selflessly, without money in mind. Biscardi, what do you have to gain financially in this whole thing after all these years? Nothing. Rob McConnell, once again, Bob, I just want to say that you have never had anything to personally gain from coming out and telling the truth besides being an honest man. Right, just being honest, and that's from the X-Zone interview. Rob McConnell, number 2, you do not have anything to personally gain from telling the truth except to be an honest person. That's true. Again, from the X-Zone interview. Does Heironimus have scruples about hoaxing film viewers? No scruples about hoaxing. Rob McConnell, if you had known after 35 years of the film would be taken so seriously by so many, would you have done it? Heironimus, yes, I would have. And I also would have demanded my money, or I would have spilled the beans or told the media a month later. And that was the December 7, 2006 X-Zone interview. Nearly a year later, Rob McConnell says, if you were to do it all over again, would you? Heironimus says, yeah, I'd do it again, for the simple reason is it wasn't against the law to do that. But if I knew what was going to become of it, well, I wouldn't do it again, no. And that was from the X-Zone interview of August 6, 2007. Is Heironimus willing to take another lie detector test? Yes, bring him on. Greg Long says he has said many times that he is willing to take many lie detector exams since he wasn't lying. Challenge to John Green. Second section, John Green's statements as recorded on the Jeff Rense Show, March 14, 2004, item 15, rebuttal online at northwestmysteries.com/makingabigfoot/critics. Well, there's the link right there. No, 2 tests are sufficient. But when a lie detector examiner I'd contacted, Randy Rusgager, called Heironimus in May 2006 and asked if he'd be willing to take a free conventional lie detector exam, Heironimus declined, saying that he thought the 2 exams he'd already taken were sufficient. And then we have suit-related contradictions. Number 35. Was it easy to walk in the costume? Walking was easy. Long. Did you feel comfortable and natural walking in the suit? Oh yeah, it was easy. It was simple, yeah. But then, that was in Making a Bigfoot, page 346. But then, later on, as a matter of fact, this was the same year, Heironimus, walking wasn't easy. I practiced the Bigfoot walk exactly the way Roger wanted it 3 times. It wasn't easy, he said. Bigfoot Hoax goes in halls of hooey. Leah Beth Ward, Yakima Herald Republic, October 7, 2004. Comment. The above referred, like the other 2 comments, to the walking at Tampico. There were no practice walks at Bluff Creek, as Heironimus said in the first X-Zone interview. I'd already practiced, at this place before, and he said that was perfect. But in August of 2004, he said it was easy. I went to Tampico. I practiced walking 2 or 3 times, and everybody says I walk like a Bigfoot anyway, so it didn't take much practice. And that was from the Seth Shostak radio interview. Now that was 2 months before this interview where he said it wasn't easy. So which is it? Number 36. Roger told my brother Howard he made the whole thing out of horsehide. Roger had skinned a red horse and attached or glued fur from an old fur coat onto the horsehide skin. Making a Bigfoot, page 345. Horsehide. First he said old fur coat. Then he said horsehide. Now he told my brother Howard that he skinned an old horse that died, indistinct, had a horse up there that kicked the bucket. He took some of that hide and put it on that suit. Well, I think that was what I was smelling when I told everybody that the suit stunk. I'm pretty sure that was the horse hide, probably half rotten where he'd skinned it. And that was from the March 14th, 2007 Tom Biscardi interview. Comment, but it would make no sense to add horsehide patches to a Morris suit from Patterson's point of view. It would give the suit a patchwork look. Horsehair is coarse, straight, and stiff, so it would clash with the fine, fluffy Dynel hairs on Morris's suit. Only from Bob Heironimus' point of view would such an addition serve a purpose, to rescue his claim that the suit stank. Without such add-ons, there would be no reason for a Morris-made fabric suit with his synthetic hairs to stink. Number 37. How big was the gap behind the eye holes? 2 inches. Interviewer Jim Pearson. Bob Heironimus was peering through 2 slits a couple of inches in front of his eyes. That was from the Coffee with Bigfoot interview. 1.5 inches. There was 1 inch to 1.5 inches between my eye and the cutouts in the mask, and that's from The Making of Bigfoot, page 355. Heironimus. The slits, were about this far from my eyes. He measured off 1 inch in front of his eyes. Making of Bigfoot, page 346. I had about 1/4 of it or 1/2 inch of space in between the mask and my entire face. Entire was a bit slurred over. Biscardi radio interview, March 14, 2007. In that last quote, Heironimus was describing the distance between his lips and the mouth of the mask. He was trying to minimize the distance on the Tom Biscardi show, to account for the fact that Patty's lips moved. That is, he had a motive to change his story, but by saying entire face, he implied the eyes as well, in contradiction to his earlier statements. How high were the boots inside the suit? Number 38. Heironimus. I slipped my legs into the legs of the suit, which felt like they were hip boots or wading boots. They go up to your waist. The Making of Bigfoot, page 344. Knee-high. Those were irrigation boots. You know, kind of like irrigators wear, up to about the knees. That's why the calves stick out pretty good up there. X-Zone radio interview, December 7, 2006. Comment on BigfootForums.com. I pointed out the contradiction above, whereupon Heironimus corrected himself in his next interview. Hip high. I had some kind of wading boots on, like hip boots. The waders came clear up to my hips. Biscardi show interview, March 14, 2007. Number 39. Were the Bigfoot's feet made of slippers? Yes, slippers. I think the feet were made of old house slippers you used to see around that looked like a Bigfoot with toes on them. Making a Bigfoot, page 344. But he told Jeff Rentz there were no slippers. Number 40. Was Heironimus barefoot or shod inside the rubber boots? Heironimus told Greg Long on page 344, in The Making of Bigfoot, I sat down on a log and took my boots off and slipped my legs into the legs of the suit. Making of Bigfoot, page 344. That was the try-on in Tampico. Interviewer Keith Olbermann. Were there bare feet inside the costume, or what was it? I was walking in my stocking feet inside the costume, and I was on Countdown with Keith Olbermann, March 22nd, 2004. And a caller says, Mr. Heironimus, were you barefoot or wearing shoes in the costume? I had shoes on, so he was shod, and that was August 23rd, 2007. Number 41. Was there padding in the suit? No padding, implicit. Long's book devotes 3.5 full pages to Heironimus' description of the suit, pages 344 to 346 and 355. And Long repeatedly interviewed him 4 times about it, initially and then on January 23rd, 29th, and 31st of 2001. See page 354. None of Long's printed questions asked about padding. Yet it's inconceivable that he didn't ask Heironimus about it. Long didn't skimp on probing this matter. He stated that he focused on trying to get all the detail he could out of Heironimus. Page 354. If Heironimus answered yes to was there padding, Long would have printed that response. So the omission of a positive response implies that the answer was no. Even if Long hadn't asked, Heironimus would have volunteered the detail if it were a fact. In addition, Heironimus initially said below that no belt was used, which is inconsistent with pillows being strapped in. See the second text box. No belt or harness. Keith Olbermann. Were you wearing a belt or a harness of some sort to keep this costume in place? No, there was no belt. And that was from the Olbermann Countdown interview. Padding and straps were present. Morris, to create that illusion of a butt crack, Roger Patterson put 2 pillows in the rear end of the suit. I know that because I talked to Bob about it, and that's what we did when we recreated the film. And absolutely, you can see what you think is the butt crack, and that's the pillows in the back that are strapped in. That's from the Viscardi interview, March 14, 2007. But then Rob McConnell also asked, did you have to have stuffing inside? Oh yes. There was football helmets, pads, and an old football helmet for the head. And the legs had rubber rib boots in the legs for the big calves, and padding in the rear end there. Number 42. Long. Do you remember seeing any clasps, any metal parts? No. The Making of Bigfoot, page 344 to 345. However, he tells Sean Forker, not Fokker, Forker, so he's saying he wore the Philip Morris suit. Hieronymus says, yes, I did. It had a zipper. That was from the X Zone radio interview for August 6, 2007. Long. The zipper, a heavy-duty type used in the 1950s and 1960s on the tops of convertible cars, was sewed on the back of the suit by a powerful sewing machine at a tent and awning store. Making a Bigfoot, page 450. Was the suit split around the waist or up the back? Around the waist. Describe the suit to me. It was made of 3 parts. It had the legs, it had a corset or middle piece between the neck and waist, and it had a head. Long. You put your feet inside big rubber boots that went to your waist. Yeah, all I can say is it felt like rubber boots. They helped me stand up. Roger and Bob slipped the torso part down over my head and shoulders. I raised my arms up. I kind of wiggled into it. It was kind of like putting on a t-shirt. Long. How did the bottom portion fit around your waist? I guess. Guess? There was kind of a drawstring, and that's from pages 344 to 345. They kind of helped me up and put the top on, Making a Bigfoot, page 349. Greg Long. Regarding the Bigfoot's legs, Heironimus repeated what he had said before they came to his waist, page 355. Caller Sean Forker. This was up the back, so he's saying he wore the Philip Morris suit. Yes, I did. It had a zipper going up and down the back. Comment. Morris made a Union suit that had a step-in back with a middle zippered opening, page 449. Unlike the suit that Heironimus initially described, it had no torso part, no t-shirt-like top, no middle piece, no drawstring, and no separate legs that came to the waist. Morris's torso and legs were a single unit, as in a romper suit. General comment. It's no good to say that Heironimus was in and out of the suit within 10 minutes, so he might not have noticed his details. See Long, page 355. According to Hieronymus' story, he was actually in and out of it once or twice more at Tampico, where he was interested enough in its effects to be involved in inserting a glass eye into it. Page 402 to 404. That must have given him time to observe it laid out on the ground, and he handled the suit both when he put it in his trunk leaving Bluff Creek and when he opened the trunk for Patterson later on. It wasn't in its sack on either occasion. He'd have paid enough attention to have observed a good deal. It wasn't a boring, routine item like a box of beans a warehouseman was putting on a shelf. Number 44. Was the suit removed from the trunk by Hieronymus' relatives? Not removed by Hieronymus' relatives. After Opal, Hieronymus' mom discovered the suit in her trunk, page 363. Long asked her, what did you do next? Opal, I didn't do anything. I shut the trunk. I've got something to show you, she said to Willa Smith, her sister-in-law, when she visited Opal that afternoon. When Opal opened the trunk, Willa jumped back in surprise. Long, did you tell her what it was? Yeah, I said, I don't know what. It's a suit. I don't know where it's come from. Willa picked up the head and put it on. That must have seemed kind of funny to you, her wearing the head. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't have put it on myself, but she did. We were laughing a little bit because she was clowning out with it. You know. What happened next? We put the head back in the trunk and closed her up. Making a Bigfoot, page 364. During the interval when it was open, Hieronymus' 8-year-old nephew, John Miller, also examined the contents of the trunk. Here is his entire description of his interaction with the suit. What do you remember? I just remember they had the trunk open, and I remember looking in there, what's that? And picking up and fooling with it. I can remember finding the head and just being a kid, I just put it right on. It was hot, and it stunk. I can remember going up to the front porch and looking in the front window to see if somebody could see me. I was going to try and scare somebody. He didn't remember Willis Smith putting the head on, the making of Bigfoot, page 365. First, the above implies that the whole suit was not removed from the trunk, only the head. Second, because I assume Heironimus and his lawyer checked out the chapters of Long's book concerning Heironimus prior to publication, which included this chapter. He implicitly endorsed the version above. Of course, he didn't have first-hand knowledge of what they did, supposedly being asleep while this was happening, but he endorsed the above as being what he'd heard from his relatives. May be removed by Heironimus' relatives. My mother saw the suit, my nephew was there, and one of my aunts, which is deceased now, was there. They got the suit out after they started quite a bit. They got the suit out, tried the head of the suit out, and then was looking at it, and that's when my aunt tried the head of it on, and my nephew. All of them tried the head of the suit on. Jeff Rent's radio show, March 1st, 2004. And my nephew tried the suit on, the head of the suit on. Biscardi. That was on the Biscardi show. According to my theory of the case, Heironimus had an ape suit in his possession for a long time and displayed it from time to time, for instance, to Gary Record. But as described by Gary, it had no resemblance to Patty. If this is the suit his relatives saw, it would be awkward for Heironimus if they saw the entire suit, because then it would be suspicious if they failed to describe it. However, apparently these relatives did in fact examine the whole suit, because when Heironimus was asked a question about it, his initial unguarded response was to acknowledge that fact and then take it back as above. However, when pressed about it, he took back his take back. Yes, was removed by his relatives. You said that your niece and your aunt, your mom got the suit out and were playing around with it. Yes, That was from the Jeff Rent's interview. Comment. My interpretation of his tap dancing above is that when he's forced to give a straight answer, he's afraid to flat out deny that the suit was removed from the trunk, for fear that Miller, if questioned, would contradict him. And that's how it looks to me from the hemming and hawing preceding the concession above. Number 45. Was Patterson's suit retrieval in Yakima surreptitious or not? Surreptitious retrieval. Heironimus did not observe the suit's retrieval. Greg Long. Later at night, Patterson and Gimlin, unseen, removed the suit from the trunk. And that's from Making a Bigfoot, page 341. That evening, Patterson and Gimlin returned Chico. With the car keys in the trunk lock or ignition, they opened the trunk and removed the suit. The following morning, Opal and Bob saw Chico in the pasture. Opal or Bob discovered that the suit wasn't in the trunk. Retrieval was in plain view, and the suit was picked up out of the trunk of your car later by Patterson. Yes, when they brought my horse back, they took the suit out of the trunk of the car. Alright, so what did they say to you? Job well done? Did they say anything like, they weren't doing high fives back then, I know. Well, they were picking their belts the way it turned out, the walk, the way it was, the Jeff Rent's radio show interview, March 1st, 2004. The last time I saw it was in the trunk of the car. They brought the horse back, they took the suit out, and that's the last I saw it. That's from the Biscardi show. A similar remark was made on the lie detector show of May 17, 2005, and the X-Zone show of August 6, 2007. Comment. The business of Patterson gaining access because Opal, his mom, accidentally left the car unlocked with the keys in the ignition, page 365 of Long's book, a version which Heironimus and his lawyer must have okayed when they reviewed the manuscript for errors, becomes awkward to explain in light of this later version. Seems to me that the sole reason for the first version, which implausibly required P&G to return after dark to remove their suit from the car, hoping the keys had been left in it to open the trunk, was to accommodate Opal's remembrance that P&G returned the horse but left without taking the suit, page 385. That would be an accurate recollection because P&G hadn't used the suit in Bluff Creek and would have tossed it back at Bob Heironimus. They couldn't retrieve the suit while she was watching because, another implausibility, they had supposedly removed it from its sack before handing it over for shipping. If Heironimus hadn't gone along with Opal's version, a glaring contradiction would have been presented to Long. But later, when that awkward situation had passed, Heironimus wanted to tell his radio audience a tale that wouldn't arouse their incredulity. More importantly, 2 years after talking to Long, which was in 2002, it might have occurred to Heironimus that he should revise his story and claim that he encountered Patterson right after the film arrived, so he could say that he handed over the postal insurance receipt at that point. He might have realized that someone might ask what happened to the receipt. I did that myself in item K in my Amazon review of Long's book. He couldn't say he threw it away because he said he wanted evidence, such as suit witnesses, that he'd been in the suit. So he almost had to create a story version in which the receipt would have been handed over. 2 days after the filming, Patterson was in a position to demand its return. 2 days after the filming was too soon for Heironimus to get suspicious about non-payment. His residence with the receipt in it was right there, so Heironimus couldn't have stalled for time. As Sherlock Holmes would say, from these facts a certain inference seems undeniable. And that is it, folks. Now there is also a Heironimus only interviews. These are just the actual interviews that were conducted with him. And I think these are, transcripts. These are transcripts of some of his interviews. I won't bore you with that. I might go through it at some point later on, but this video is pretty long. It's almost 2 hours, so I'm gonna leave it at that, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Y'all be good or be good at it.